From now on, it's TV 23.
I'm waiting on you. Wait.
Vision, the people perish. Welcome to Vision Plus, a program featuring a positive outlook, dealing with everyday situations of marriage, children, and business with challenges and opportunities. Believing Philippians 4:13. You and I can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. Teacher, author, speaker, delighting audiences from New York to Sacramento with a heart and message for the people today. Here's Bonnie Libhart.
Hello and welcome. You know, you may have had an opportunity to hear of Dr. Charles Patterson and his wife Jean Patterson. They actually own a clinic, a medical clinic, they may correct me in exactly what they call it, in near Huntsville, Alabama, Meridianville, Alabama. I think it's considered a rural area there, the rural part of Huntsville. However, people in Meridianville wouldn't call it that. But and it's always so wonderful to hear of these physicians, and you think they probably were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and we get to find out. But many of us that were born in another generation didn't have that silver spoon in the mouth. Now, some of you watched one of the programs we did in the past, and we had one of the women on, Patty Allen, that was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, a daughter of the mafia, and she had all the money she could ever want and gave it away, in fact. Well, we don't always have the kind of life that we're born into that we have made of our life. In other words, yes, I was born in Paragould, Arkansas. We did have indoor plumbing, and my dad had a Sherwin-Williams paint and wallpaper store, and it burned. He didn't have enough insurance to cover all of his vendors, so for my childhood, he spent it in paying off all of his vendors that he owed. Moved us out onto a farm, no electricity, running water. REA didn't come through until, that's rural electric, until I was about 11 years old. And so my kids say, yes, walk 3 miles, used to be 3 miles, they've got it up to about 10 miles, through the snow, barefoot, or whatever stories they're telling now. But I made a decision to go on with my life, even though it may not have been perfect as a child. And Jean Patterson, that many of you know, and even Chuck Patterson, have some stories that they can tell you. Jean, you grew up with
11 children.
11
My mother
children.
had 11 children. My dad died when I was 3 months old, and Mother raised all of us kids. Of course, she had also 5 stepchildren, which was her sister's kids, but she died with TB. So Mother took those 5 plus 11 kids, and she raised us, and she told us about the Lord. And we never had a bathroom until I was 16, telling how old I am, but it was really awesome. We had a little tub that we put a little thing we plugged in and got the water warm. Before that, we had to heat it on the fire, on the stove.
Pot-bellied stove, I know,
That's right.
because that's the way we heat
Cast kerosene.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother was always so precious and so kind and giving. Even the hobos would come along the railroad track and would get on our porch. My mother would take and give them beans and cornbread, whatever we had. The people, neighbors, would send them to us. But Mother loved people, and she loved the Lord most of all. But out of all that, Mother taught me so much that love is so important, and putting Christ first, too. But we had so little, but yet I had hand-me-downs, socks, and I had only all colored, and I said, when I get big, I'll never have colored socks. I'll have white socks, because I just didn't like colored socks. And I had hand-me-down shoes, which would wear the toe on my corn on my back, or a callus on the back of your foot. And you know, like I said, it's just how you make
Hey,
it.
I had flour sack
Yeah,
dresses,
well, I did
and my
too.
kids don't even know what
That's
that means.
right, and
But
I
we
did-
used to buy this flour in 25-pound
Yeah.
bags, and
That's
it would,
right.
had print,
That is true.
and my mom made dresses for me
Yeah.
out of that. And then she would get my aunt had
Yeah.
lived in town,
Yeah.
and she had clothes because she taught school
Yeah.
and had, you know, more
Yeah.
cash. And I would get their clothes, and she'd remake them
Yeah,
into clothes for me. And I thought that was great.
I did
I
too.
still don't mind
Well, I
going.
had 3 dresses, and I'd hang up one and wear the next one. They changed. The mother would wash, and then I'd do that all over again. But they were made out of chintz cloth. I don't know if you know
Oh
what
yeah, I
that is.
remember
And
that.
it
Kind
was,
of shiny on one side.
but I was
cotton.
proud of them. I mean, I was, thank God, I mean, because I didn't know no different.
Mhm.
But out of the 11 of us, my mother passed away when I was 23, and so of course, out of the 11 of us, there's only 3 of us living, and that's it. But we never knew a lot of fancy things, but we had love. We had
did
homemade
too.
biscuits, and you stick your finger down there and make a hole and put your syrup in there. That was so good. And I mean, but again, I say love and the commitment to
I grew out on
their
a
children,
farm, and
as
I
my
had
mama
to
was.
do a lot of garden
Yeah.
work and
Well, we
picking
did that
cotton and
too.
chopping cotton. And I remember one year it was my job to plant the peas.
Oh,
And these English peas, and I thought, okay, I can't see that it's so hot out here, and I was red-headed and freckle-faced and so hot, so I dug me a hole, and I put all the peas down in that hole, and I got back in the house. My mother said, well, that didn't take you long, and I didn't say a word, and I think she suspicioned what I might have done. Boy, it wasn't in a couple of weeks, and all these peas came up in one place,
Oh,
and she went
man.
out there, and I thought, oh, me. Truly, my sins did find me
They
out.
did. They
And so she told me that. But I learned that lesson that your sins will
Yeah,
find you out.
yes,
You
that's
can't hide
right,
them.
that's true.
Now, you grew up, you were, like my husband, you had a bathroom inside.
We had a
didn't you?
bathroom.
And you were a Quaker,
I
weren't
wasn't
you?
born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and it wasn't exactly a wooden spoon. But my parents were both teachers,
My mother was a
and
teacher.
we grew up at the end of the Depression and around World War II.
And you were a Quaker family, weren't
Yes,
you?
my
And what does
parents-
that mean? What
That's
kind of life
a
was
denomination, just like anybody else's life, except my parents insisted that we go to church and learn
did
Bible
too?
verses. And
that? But you didn't speak in church. When Quakers, I always think of as sitting there for an hour quiet without saying a word.
well, now my grandfather was a Quaker preacher.
Hmm.
And we all went to a Quaker meeting and sit there on benches, and I had to be careful that I didn't make my cousin laugh by doing funny things. But my grandfather always had a message.
Now, what kind of funny things could you do?
Oh, I'd make faces. But that's beside the point. We both matured from that. But anyway, we grew up in the little southeastern town of Athens, Ohio, and my dad, during the Depression, sold eggs to make
My
make
mother
a
did
living.
too.
And then finally worked at the gas company, Ohio Fuel Gas Company, as an engineer. And at that time, we didn't have a great deal of money. We made ends meet, always paid our bills. But as far
We
as
did
toys, we made our own toys. I love to make things out of wood. And I would make toys and all kind of things for Christmas gifts. And my brother is 5 years younger than me, and I would make him sell them. I had a wagon, tricycle, and we'd pull him around, and he'd go to the door and knock. And I'd have all these toys I'd made and all these Christmas gifts.
Well, what kind of toys did you make? Jeff?
Mostly out of wood.
I know, but what?
Door stops, things to hang, put notes in, you name it.
Wood papers.
Yeah, door knockers, anything that I could make out of wood, little toys for cars and trucks and things that people could sell for gifts. So at an early age, I learned to be self-sufficient. And we didn't have television, of course, then, and we didn't have radio then. And,
Now, we did have radio.
well, yes, and I used to build radios.
Oh, you built
Yeah, I
radios.
used to build radios.
I used to listen to the Long Ranger on
Right,
radio.
and I did too, all the hit parades and all that stuff. But I like to build radios too. But my point is, at that time, I learned to be constructive. I learned to make things.
Innovative.
Innovative. I'd take a piece of junk.
You
that I'd
were
find.
true first of the entrepreneurs, though you say you're not an entrepreneur.
Well,
that is the
I like to
original
do
entrepreneur.
Things. I like to do things. And take an idea, and I'd try to materialize it, invent something, and I'd try to make something. And I enjoyed reading. And I would go to my grandfather's library and learn how to make gunpowder. And I was probably
Library
8 years old.
meaning you were reading the
I was
Britannica.
reading. That's right.
I read the Compton's Encyclopedia.
Okay.
You read the
I
next
bet the
level
big
up,
one.
the
I read
big one.
one. And so I learned how to, at age 8 or 9, I learned how to make gunpowder. And I didn't do this to destroy anything. I do this to be constructive. So I built a rocket.
Now, we won't say how many years ago, but it might be 6 decades.
It was about that, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a rocket that I used a coat hanger to launch it, and this with a fuse, I lit the thing and it went over my uncle's barn, and almost hit a cow.
But you were almost before the rocket era.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
you were one of the first persons that had rockets that actually worked.
Yeah, and I enjoyed building electronic devices before they were popular, and making, devising radio transmitters. Didn't care about talking on the radio, but I liked to build them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you also continued the entrepreneurial spirit. I call it that, the making things spirit. But you went to college and became a doctor. Did your parents pay your way through school?
Well, not exactly. Of course, they helped as much as they could, but a lot of the times I would paint fences or work in a laboratory, work in a research lab.
You got a scholarship for
I got
your
a scholarship for
grades,
some
too.
education, and most of the time I worked as a, well, I was a caddy at the golf course, earned some money there, mowed yards, worked in the research lab, soils research lab, and had a chance to meet some famous people like Kettering, who invented the starter on the car, and had a chance to rub elbows with some people in this type of thing that provided inspiration for me.
Could I get your autograph? I'm impressed.
Right.
And then you came on and learned play the piano. You were learning to play the piano and draw and paint and all at that same time that you're going through that. And I'm back over in the cotton patch in Arkansas about that time. And I did get up at 5 in the morning, and I would go. Mother and Daddy would only pay me a little bit if I picked or chopped cotton at my home. But if I would go to a neighbor's, and I'd have to get up like at 5 in the morning to go and pick or chop over there, then I got to keep that money if I did more than. So that was the first dress I ever bought. And I was about in the 7th grade, and I actually had a real dress bought from a store. And that was kind of exciting. So what were you doing? You were you were the child, the baby of 11 children plus 5 others.
I was trying to go to school, and I quit school, and I was going to take nursing. Then I sort of got sidetracked and married at that time and had 3 children. And then through life, became back to medical school, but on the job training, so I've been doing that for about 30-something years, probably. Mm-hmm. But really, I just grew up in a good Christian
Well, now,
home.
when did you learn to sing?
Oh, well, I sang when I was a kid. I mean, I sang at school.
Mm-hmm.
But
and you were you were learning to sing, and he's learned to play every instrument.
So God had
an idea for it. Yeah.
Right.
So we're going to get to hear you sing again. It's a medley that I don't know if it's on this CD or not. It's Amazing Grace Medley. What are some of the other songs that are with it in addition to Amazing?
He's a Lily of the Valley, and everybody ought to know.
And so we're ready to hear that. Gene and Chuck Patterson, Dr. Charles Patterson and Gene Patterson are going over to sing a medley of Amazing Grace. And I get to tell all the things that I was doing at the time. I think Francis Dempsey's going to be part of their backup in some of the songs they might sing. But when I grew up, now I ran away from home and got married at age 16, because back in the olden days then, you were not promiscuous or go out and have early sex like some of them do today. If you wanted to have sex, you got married. So that's why I guess some of the people got married so young in the cotton patches of Arkansas and Alabama and Tennessee and the southern states. I don't know about Pennsylvania where my husband was from, but it seemed that he went on all the way through Penn State before he ever had his first date. And so people live differently in different parts of the world. I know when I married Tony, his parents took him down and had him disowned because he married a Southerner, and he married a divorced woman with a child, so that was not. So it took a long time to learn to get along with people like that. But you know what? They had to learn to get along with me, too. And we found out that we do love each other. And one of the things that I learned, I was in glee clubs, what we called it then, at Bay High School in Craighead County, Arkansas, and then loved to sing in the choir. But here we're going to get to hear someone sing that not only sang in the choir, but sang in school and church and other places, and that's Jean Patterson singing Amazing Grace, and her husband's backing her up on the organ. I don't know if he's got an organ and piano. We'll just get to find out. And you can get a copy of that CD by getting in touch with us, Vision Plus, at 1-877-823-6886. And for any donation, you can have, well, preferably $15 or more, you can have a copy of this CD. We have other CDs and educational material, spiritual material we'd like you to have too. Jean and Chuck Patterson.
Amazing grace, oh how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I was lost, oh, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. He's the lily of the valley. He's the bright morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000. Everybody ought to know. There's room at the cross for you. Go million paths, there's still room for one. Yes, there's room at the cross for you.
Boy, that was really beautiful. And I'm hoping they'll sing Jesus, 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 is what I call it. It's on their CD, and if we can get them back again, I think that Miss Dempsey is going to join them. Frances Dempsey is coming over. Frances, you join Chuck and Jean and assist them in the backup music there. Just go right on over closer to them. That's all right. You're not, he doesn't bite. And we're glad that you joined us. Frances Dempsey joining Chuck and Jean Patterson in There's Something About That Name.
Like a fragrance after
and Chuck Patterson, and also assisted there by Mary Frances Dempsey. She reminds me to say Mary Frances Dempsey. And so that's a part of their tape, their praise and worship tape from Gene and Chuck Patterson. You know, this couple have been through a lot, and many things we don't have time to talk about, but one of them was Dr. Patterson is also a pilot, and he was piloting his plane one day when it crashed. And yet you're here today. Not too many people walk away from a crash. So, and I don't think you walked away, but tell us about that.
I got a free helicopter ride after that.
There you go. You have been pilot. How long have you been a pilot?
Got my pilot's license in about 1963, 64.
So
And flew quite a bit then, and I was out for a while not flying because I lived in Colorado, and I don't think anybody should not have a Jeep, but have an well, they should have a Jeep instead of an airplane, because the mountain flying is totally dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And so I...
was that where you had to crash?
No, it's not. I crashed in a very flat area near Huntsville.
Well, how did that happen?
Well, it was a kind of a warm day, and I flew into George Epps Field in Harvest, and it was a very short runway, and I came in maybe a little fast, a little bit high, and knew I was running out of runway, so I decided I'd try to make a go around and get around that thing. Looked up, and there were trees and power lines coming right at me. I wasn't able to get the altitude I wanted, because being a hot day, the engine just kind of faltered a little bit, and I knew I wasn't going to make it over, and I didn't want to go under them. So what I did, I made a left turn. If I'd turned right, I'd flown into George Epps' house. Gone straight, I'd met some power lines. Turning left, ended up coming down real hard in a cotton field. And I could see that we're just dropping suddenly, and of course the cotton field doesn't have any it's not like a hard surface that it just kind of hits the ground and grabs, and the sudden impact pulled the wings down the plane and knocked me on the ground pretty hard, and the instrument panel came down and crushed my leg and trapped me in the wreckage, and my hands were all mangled, had holes I could look through my hands, and the top was off the airplane. I was just laying there. Of course, I didn't hurt anything. I mean, I was conscious.
You were conscious.
I was
Crashed
conscious.
leg.
Yeah.
Look through your hand.
But I was optimistic.
Blood everywhere.
I was optimistic. I'm going to be all right.
And your Mark was riding there.
Mark and my little grandson, but didn't, just a sprained ankle with Mark, and Tyler had 3 teeth knocked out, but he's 13 now and he's got them back.
So what happened at that moment from then on?
Well, at that moment, I was kind of dazed.
Did you actually think, this is it, I'm going to die?
Well, no, I knew I was going to be all right. I looked up my hands, and they had holes all the way through them. My hand was crushed, and there's blood pouring out, and I could see the bones in there. And I looked up again. There's another set of hands coming down toward me. Also had nail holes. And he told me it wasn't the time yet.
A lot of work to do.
And since that time, I had no pain, didn't hurt, didn't have to have a pain shot. Told the paramedics, they're patients of mine, I did flight physicals on them, and one of them said, what are you going to do for flight physicals? I said, well, I got time to do it right now. So anyway, I got back to the hospital and found that my leg was crushed and they were going to take it off. But I said, no. Gene told the surgeon that please don't take his leg off. So I end up with a lot of hardware in there, and I can still play the organ pedals, I still walk, still play some tennis, and
Golf?
A little bit of golf too, right. And my hands, the biggest thrill I had was when I was able to get home, get the cast off, and play the keyboard.
Play the keyboard, and you saw that extra set of hands that came down with nail holes in the hands, and they told you it's going to be all right. You're ruining my makeup.
He was reading the 23rd Psalm when he was sitting there, too.
What do you mean? You don't
Reciting
mean...
in my mind, I was
Oh,
saying
okay. 23rd Psalm.
I knew I'd be all right.
All right, let's have you to recite a little bit of that now.
The part that I remember most at that time, though I go through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me.
The Lord is Chuck's shepherd and our shepherd. We shall not want. You know, I love that because of the want part. It doesn't say we shall not need. It says we shall not want. There you were with your hands. You're now able to play the keyboard. You're able to do anything. You just recently built an incredible thing with your for your golf, to test your golf club.
Yeah, we made a box tester to test.
Huge thing.
Yeah, out of plywood.
And you made that.
Yeah.
And
put it together.
now you have the home that you have. You have a pool and a big fence that's there, and you fell off the fence and broke your hip.
I was trying to dig up a wisteria vine. The Lord didn't. I mean, the devil just trying to do everything he can to it. But I fell off the about a 6-foot wall, and with me and the axe and the vine all fell, and I broke my hip. And Chuck happened to hear the bump. He was in the front yard, and so he came around, and I couldn't move. I was hollering, and it was hurting so bad. Well, he tried to carry me to the porch. Well, it was hurting so bad I couldn't stand it. So he called. He set me down on a bench, and he called an ambulance. But I mean, the Lord it has never bothered me. The doctor put a new hip in.
Amazing
yeah,
human beings.
God has just been so good to us. He's blessed us.
An airplane crashed,
He's blessed us.
and yet you went right back. How soon was it that you went back to work?
Well, I tell you, the doctors in town were so good to cover for me while I was in the hospital, and our patients are so loyal that they didn't want to see anybody else, and they didn't block off to somebody else. But I guess I was out couple of weeks or so.
Couple of weeks.
Came back with a cast on leg.
Airplane crashed, crushed leg.
And what's that, lamb chop? Anyway, I had one hand I could use, but I went back to work and sat in a chair and saw patients, and the doctors in town were very good in backing me up on
Well,
things.
you want to give us a couple of their names, if you remember?
Dr. Urbandy was fantastic. And another doctor.
You're loyal to him, too.
Dr. Misra is also good. And several others that are no longer in Huntsville. But the whole medical community kind of pitched in.
Truly connected. Well, that's because you've been such a fine friend of theirs all of these years. And so it's great that friends love each other and are there for each other.
I thank God for Dr. Maddox, too. He had a lot to do because he helped us with medical things, which was like $35,000 for the hospital bill.
$35,000 for the hospital bill. Now
that off a month, but
finally
God
got the hospital bill paid off.
Your insurance didn't cover that.
No,
I don't understand that.
We did. Well, it's like a deductible.
$40,000 deductible. Excuse me.
That's what it was.
Well, I'll have to come to the doctor more often so you can pay that bill off.
The bill's paid off.
Oh, bill's paid off.
Paid
All right. How long ago has that been, Dr. Pat?
Oh, it's
last year.
Last year we finally got it paid off.
But I mean, how long has it been since?
10 years.
10 years. That's all? 10 years that you had
off.
the crashed in the airplane. Wow, God has been really blessed the two of you and blessed us with your music and just being our friends. And the only person, and when I tell people that this is one doctor that actually came to our house, he and his wife, when I wasn't getting better from medicine he had prescribed and found out that someone had given him the wrong prescription. But when I tell that, they think that you're the doc up in New York from that television show that visits.
Well, now, when I first was in practice, and I won't say when, I will too, it's in the 60s. Started practicing in the late 50s, early 60s. And we did make house calls. And it was in a small community, and we took care of a lot of the shut-ins and drive around and see them. Of course, we didn't have all the technology then either. And the other thing that I might point out, our expenses were not that high then either.
That's right. Dr. Charles Patterson, a man I know of that made at least one home visit, and he and his wife, and they have a clinic in Huntsville, Alabama, and Meridianville, Alabama. And you can get their tapes. It is a Songs of Anointed Praise and Worship, Chuck and Jean Patterson. And I am Bonnie Libhart, along with Dr. Charles Patterson, his wife, Jean, and bless your heart for watching.
Island.